The featured company is a paid client of Proactive Group Holdings, and this recording is disseminated by Proactive on its behalf.
I don't know if investors appreciate how hard it is to hit on your very first ever hole, both either C3 metals or historically into a greenfield project. And we did with a broad intercept of 269 meters at 0.3% copper with some byproduct credits of gold, moly, and silver.
All right, welcome back inside our Proactive newsroom. And joining me now is Dan Simons. He is the CEO of C3 Metals. And Dan, it's great to see you again. How are you?
I'm doing well, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so really exciting results out. The first ever drill hole at Khaleesi. And we'll talk about sort of the results in just a second, but maybe remind everyone a little bit about Khaleesi and what this drill program is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Khaleesi is a brand new discovery that we made about 8 kilometers to the west of our existing Montana to Cobre resource, where we have 52 million tons at 0.5% copper and 0.2 gold, which equates to 570 million pounds of copper and 326,000 ounces in a pit-constrained resource. We discovered Khaleesi as we were expanding our position, our land position to the west. We now encompass 310 square kilometers. We're really a junior among the giants along this belt, where we're less than 45 kilometers from both the MMG's Las Bambas mine and Hudbay Minerals Constancia mine, and then further to the southeast down the belt, Glencore is operating the Antamina mine. Freeport's operating the Cerro Verde mine, which is their second largest producer in Freeport's portfolio. So it's quite a prolific, world-class, very well-known copper producing belt, and we have one of the largest positions of a junior on that belt.
And so you had a geological model of what you wanted to look at, and that's where the drilling sort of happened. And are you most happy about, and I'll let you tell the grades and what you saw and everything, but what are you most happy about in this particular hole? Is it the identification of it or the grading or the widths or a bit of everything, I guess?
You know, if we look at the grades from this first hole, and although we can't call it ore grade because it's one hole, we don't have a mineral
Sure.
reserve. If this hole was drilled at any of those other producing mines along this belt, that would be in the mine plan. So if you look at the tonnage, so these are big tonnage targets along this belt. If we look at all the other mines along this belt, if you look at what's been depleted and what's left to be mined, they're all north of 1 billion tons of ore. So these are big targets, and these grades work. I think what excites me most is, you know, I don't know if investors appreciate how hard it is to hit on your very first ever hole, both either C3 metals or historically into a greenfield project. And we did with a broad intercept of 269 meters at 0.3% copper with some byproduct credits of gold, moly, and silver. And then as we went down the hole, we got into a magnetite skarn zone, which the grade came up about 37% to 0.41 over 60 meters. So although that was a little deeper just because down hole, one of the big takeaways is we have a skarn on the western side of the property. We have this batholith that's invaded by porphyry style mineralization on the eastern side. And all through the middle, there's this glacial till cover, and it makes it completely blind. So we're using geophysics to target under the till. And our very first hole extended mineralization 100 meters, at least 100 meters beyond the till, which means that area is wide open, which significantly increases the drill target and tonnage potential at Khaleesi.
So you're doing 6,000 meters in this particular drill program. So are you changing the way you're going? Or are you continuing to focus on a certain way away from where your resource was or back towards it?
You know, as you get information and visual
Yeah.
also, even with copper, you can see visually. So you do make tweaks to your plan as you go. For instance, this first hole that we drilled, we went through this garnet skarn and then a more barren diorite back into garnet skarn before we hit the magnetite skarn, which is a very receptive rock unit, and that's where we saw our highest grade copper. Now that we know that magnetite skarn sitting underneath that glacial till zone, we can come up and do a shallow hole right across it and hopefully extend the mineralization 200 meters closer to surface. So very, very encouraged by that. And that's an example is as we learn about what's happening underneath this blind area that we can step into some shallower holes as well, which obviously lower capital. If they hit similar mineralization, lowers overall strip ratios for a future mine plan.
Yeah. And lastly, Dan, do you look at potential of projects this early when you said you only have one hole? So, but do you look at potential or is it just more about, okay, we've got this, let's see where we're going from here?
Yeah, you know, before we ever drill a single hole, I always want to know, I always ask geologists, what is our tonnage target? Because we have to have an idea of what grade of mineralization do we need if that tonnage target holds together. Now, you can kill tonnages really quickly when you start drilling. That's just part of exploration. But if you're successful and you have a big enough target, then you have an idea of approximately what grades you're going to need for economic viability. So we think about this economically from day one, and how we come up with those tonnage targets. It's geologic mapping, surface alteration, soil geochemistry, rock geochemistry, and geophysical data. So we have a very large target at Khaleesi. We're very happy with the results of this first hole. We have 8 holes completed, so there's just going to be more and more news flow coming now.
All right, look forward to that. Dan, thanks so much. Good update, and good to see you as well.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
All right, Dan Simons, the CEO of C3 Metals.
The featured company is a paid client of Proactive Group Holdings, and this recording is disseminated by Proactive on its behalf. It is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, an offer, or a solicitation to buy or sell any securities. Viewers should conduct their own research and consult a qualified financial advisor before making investment decisions. The views expressed are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect those of Proactive Group Holdings, trading as Proactive Investors, or its affiliates. No responsibility is accepted for any loss arising from reliance on the information presented.